E.T. Phone Home?
E.T. Phone Home is on the list. I don't think it's going to be in volume 2.
I love that movie, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But I love that movie.
No, in fact, I just rewatched that recently. It's a great film.
Yeah, talk about trying to get home and how hard it is.
Because that's what we're all trying to do. We're all trying, on a metaphysical level, we all long for that sense of peace. The other thing that's in the book that I weaved in, I mentioned already the work of Jung and Freud on dream analysis. So the other thing that's been happening as the film industry has developed is that we're getting more and more influence from Eastern religions. So, and I even don't particularly care for the word religion, but Buddhism and
philosophy.
Yeah, they're philosophies, right? So in so many ways, that has really influenced a lot of these filmmakers. As I mentioned, Joseph Campbell actually met a famous Indian guru named Krishnamurti when he was 22 years old on a cruise ship. And Krishnamurti was basically a Hindu, and this very impressionable young Joseph Campbell, before he met Carl Jung even, met Krishnamurti, and that just totally changed his life direction, where he became fascinated by the philosophies in Hinduism, the Upanishads, and so forth.
Well, do you think that because the world is really shrinking because of the internet and obviously all of the electronic communications, that I don't know how to put this, American films will be more influenced by other cultures, and other cultures will be influenced by, in other words, there'll be a melding somewhere of cultures. Not a complete, integration of it, but that influences will cross lines.
Absolutely, and we see that, now where, of course, American films are everywhere, and on the other hand, we're seeing it's so easy for us because in some ways, if you think about it, it is kind of a bearing out of like the Buddhist ideal of us kind of all coming together. We're all, in a sense, coming together because information is available to us at our fingertips. Different concepts are available to us very easily, and you are seeing that kind of universal understanding developing.
And I also think it's interesting that countries that are oppressive, have an oppressive regime, will immediately try to get rid of all traces of American culture.
They will, and in fact, I remember...
and it's not because we're tacky.
I remember there was, before the Berlin Wall fell, one of the ambassador for what was then the Soviet Union's son defected to the United States. And I remember seeing him on TV. He goes, why did you leave? Well, he said, I just think that, he said, made some reference to Mick Jagger, which I just thought how fascinating that this kid who has lived in Russia, and now he's in the West, they can't keep him away from the freedom of Western civilization, and he decides, I'd rather be here.
Well, my son as a teenager said that rock and roll would destroy the Soviet Union.
Yes.
And he was right.
And he was right.
Which I think is really very interesting. That's for you, Michael. So, publishing. How is publishing? We'll talk about nitty-gritty now.
Yeah, publishing is challenging. I actually was, this is actually self-published. I had been in talks with a publishing house, but there was a lot of aspects that I was not particularly happy with. And the truth of the matter is that these days it is very easy to self-publish, and it's a much more direct route.
And the writing is one thing. The writing is the joy. The publishing is a mechanical thing that you have to get around when you self-publish. But the real bear is marketing. And even if you traditionally published this book, they wouldn't do much marketing for you, so you would end up doing the marketing.
Exactly right.
And so, you have to get into social media and all the other things, like doing a TV show like this. And So you might as well self-publish. I self-published as well. And it's funny, I have a mystery series for kids, and when I write, I see it as a movie. That's how I write.
Exactly.
So it's really, it's interesting. And a question I'd like to ask you is, a lot of people will say, well, I read the book, and the book was so much better than the movie. Why do you think people say that?
Well, and they also say the opposite, which is that often bad books make good movies. It's a different.
That's interesting
yeah.
too.
I mean, not always, but often they're just different medium. So a really good book. I mean, I love the book Bonfire of the Vanities, and you know they had Tom Hanks in he's probably my favorite actor, and the movie was terrible. It's a very different medium. It is not, one of the things you find in film is they're not as linear. In fact, all of these films are not linear. They're not a straight progression of story. They kind of bounce around because it's, a film is more an emotional experience, and it's more of the screenwriter and the director feeding us, bringing us along. Books are more interactive, right? You're actually, as you read a book, you're thinking about it, and you're reading it at your own pace.
And you're visualizing.
Yes.
And every character comes up as you would see them, not as the director of a movie would see them.
Exactly.
And there so many times you'll see a movie and you'll say, oh, I never pictured that character like that. Or, wow, that was perfect.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. So, okay, we have about a minute left, and I would like to ask you the question I always ask everybody. For someone who wants to write a book, what advice do you give them?
You have to love what you do. If I just published it and no one ever bought it, I would feel good about it because it was something I really had to do. It's not to say that being successful with it is not a good thing, but you have to love what you do.
Yes, and I think just loving what you've done and creating something like this, that's a success in itself.
Exactly.
And I have a feeling that this book is probably not going to be the end of the story, but the beginning of a story, because I think this is a very interesting topic.
Thank you.
And so I look forward to the next book. And what's the latest movie you've seen?
The latest movie I've seen, I'm actually watching Star Trek: The Next Generation now. And again, very metaphysical. Fantastic. So that's
Talk about a journey myth.
exactly. And again, fantasy and allowing us to open up our minds.
I can't wait till the new Star Wars movie comes out with the
looking forward
original
to it.
cast,
Yeah.
because I'm going to take my son, who was 14 at the time, and we're going to go together.
Fantastic.
So great to have you.
It's a real pleasure. Thank you
Yes,
very much.
Thank you.